Welcome gamers to episode 32 of Pocket Edition. Today I am joined by Count Fracula, our friend from the newscast team. How are you going, sir?
Hello!
Oh, he's pretty chipper.
Yeah, I am not. I just felt like trying to put on a chipper impression.
I'm pretty chipper. He just got a new webcam, so that's exciting.
A new webcam, a new game. Today, this has been a good week for me in terms of getting new things. Gonna be honest. I bought a lot of Sim stuff this week.
That does not happen to me nearly enough, unfortunately. But oh well, what can you do? Today though, we're opening a significant can of worms. This is going to be another can of worms, I think.
It's gonna be a big can of worms.
I'm kind of flying into this relatively blind. Count has promised to detail this topic. So without further ado, Count, let's try to tiptoe through this and let's handle it off to you so you can detail this can of worms as best as possible, and then we'll wade into the shit with our opinions while trying to not cause a shitstorm.
Indeed. So, there is a journalist called Jessica Price, and you've probably already clicked the like or the dislike button on this video because of it. So let's just go into the quick sort of premise of what I'm going to be doing. So, there was a big Twitter storm about this journalist. No, not journalist, sorry. She is a writer. She's a games writer. So there was a big Twitter storm about her and lots of things happened and reactions and everything. And what I'm going to do, as someone who I know about the situation, but I've been watching from the sidelines, I've been deliberately staying out of it because I don't want to attract the hate train, basically, because both sides are being arseholes. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to break down the whole thing into a sort of manageable chunk, explain it to Sully, and then I want to get his opinion on what happened, whether it's right or wrong, which side was in the right, So,
yes, I am an opinionated man, and I apologize for flying blind, but Count, just hit me on the head with this one. We're just doing it. This is all of a sudden.
Yes.
So, forgive me.
We've just had a meeting and I decided we were going to do it, so yes. Right. Well, we know you're an opinionated man because when this started, you were part of the opinion team. Remember when that was a thing?
I do not. I deny everything.
Anyway, so Jessica Price, let's go back to her, on Twitter on the 3rd of July. So this is actually going back quite a way. She did a little thread basically talking about her opinions on writing for characters in MMOs. So she laid out her opinion on writing the characters in MMOs. I think it was player characters in MMOs. So she laid out her opinion on this in a series of tweets, and you know it's all pretty decent tweets. Just explaining her opinion. After this thread, a person by the name of Deroir, D-E-R-O-I-R, so Deroir probably, Gaming, who is also a YouTuber, I am told, posted a small little thread in response. It's four tweets. I'm going to read them for you verbatim, and there is a very good reason I'm going to do it like that, and which we'll get onto later. So, Deroir Gaming said this. Really interesting thread to read, however, allow me to disagree slightly. I don't believe the issue lies with the Momorphica genre itself, as your wording seemingly suggests. I believe the issue lies in the constraints of the living story's narrative design. When you want the outcome to be the same across the board for all players' experiences, then yes, by design they are extremely limited in how you can construct the personality of the player character, but if instead players were given the option to meaningfully express their character throughout branching dialogue options, which also aren't just on the checklist for an achievement that forces you through all the dialogue options, then perhaps players would be more invested in the role-playing aspect of that particular Momorphica. Nonetheless, I appreciate the insightful thread. So, bear in mind, that is the response that set off this whole storm.
That seems relatively respectful and well worded without
Yeah.
actually having heard anything else about this.
Yeah, you know.
Okay, so just to clarify, what was she specifically detailing again? Sorry.
So she was detailing her thoughts about writing for player characters in MMOs and the sort of
Okay.
difficulties and other things thereof, and her opinions on how to do it well.
Okay, so this guy's just shared his opinion on the topic or
You
subject.
know, I mean,
Alright.
he did it, you know, I think that's a pretty respectful opinion, and that's a pretty respectful way to bring it across, you know, I've no
Yeah.
particular issues with that. So, and here's where we go from here. Her immediate response, or not immediate, it was the day after, was to say, "Thanks for trying to tell me what we do internally, my dude." So obviously took it the wrong way a little bit.
Slightly condescending, perhaps.
Yeah, a little bit. Then quote tweeted the start of this thread saying, "Today, in being a female game dev, allow me, a person who does not work with you, explain to you how to do your job."
See, I don't like that.
No.
The fact that she has to paint herself as the female game dev, like she's victimized or something. Anyway, sorry, I don't know.
Yep.
Just go on.
No,
Just
that's
speaking as I
fine.
go.
You're welcome to express your opinion. I'm going to try and not express my opinion. I'm going to try and explain this dryly. So Dara replied to this saying, "So much for an open discussion, I guess. I meant no disrespect at all. Never did, never will. Neither did I imply I knew better, nor has this anything to do with gender. Never did, never will. I will retract my comment because obviously I'm in the wrong forum for this kind of talk." And,
Okay.
you know,
Well
again,
handled.
it's fairly well handled. He's doing well here. He's sort of like, okay, well, she's obviously not interested in this kind of discussion, so I'm just gonna back off.
Peacekeeping. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So then someone else replied to that tweet saying, "Sympathies on the reaction you got here. I know you don't know me well, but would you be interested in talking about why she may have reacted the way she did?" And Jessica Price replied to that saying, "Untag me."
All right.
Yes, bit aggressive for no particular reason. So she then goes on in a separate tweet saying, and in quotes, "As an amateur fantasy writer, I'd like to tell you, a professional fantasy writer, ... Then saying, "Maybe listen to yourself and stop right there, my dude." Okay.
Condescending.
Yeah, to which someone replies, "Well, it's odd they classify themselves as such as possible. They still have or had valuable criticism." To which someone else replied, "Maybe it wasn't valid criticism, was instead the same sexist stuff she had to put up with every single day. Either way, I trust her to be able to tell the difference." I'm just going to read this as a sort of thread now, and then I'm going to tell you when Jessica comments.
Alright.
"Perhaps we clearly don't know the whole story, but I didn't see a sexist comment from what was provided. I'd rather not assume someone is sexist rather than the criticism was valid or not. Jessica, weary stare in the asterisks. Please go away. I don't know what I said to upset you, but fair enough. The comment I was talking about wasn't necessarily sexist. Your response implying that my reaction was overblown or my experience of it didn't happen, however, is the shit women deal with in games every day. Every time we say something about our experiences and you just used one of your pre-block strikes." So she's obviously a very block-happy person by the seams of it. "Certainly wasn't trying to imply that it didn't happen. Your reaction in the first tweet without further context came across that their criticism because they are an amateur, their words meant less. I would have responded the same regardless of sex or gender." To which she responded, "Sure, dude, now get out of my fucking feed with your assumptions and your entitlement to my time."
Okay. She's just clearly having a bad day, I would say.
Yeah.
Something's rubbed her up.
But anyway. Right.
Is there more to this?
There is more to this.
Okay.
There is more to
have
this.
we? Okay, are we going to cover that, or have we captured?
We're definitely
the
going to
meaningful-
cover this because it goes
Okay.
so much further. I'm just scratching the surface at this
fuck.
point.
Holy
Yeah.
shit. Okay, alright. Well, unload.
Yeah. So
Wow.
it goes off Twitter at some point, but we're still on Twitter at the moment. So a colleague of Jessica Price called Peter Fries, also I think he's also a writer for it's AriaNet, by the way, the company that make Guild Wars 2. He decided to chip in on this discussion, saying this. Here's a bit of insight that I legitimately hope he reflects on. She never asked for this feedback. And after a reply saying, what the fuck, what kind of way the world is looking at? We didn't ask for our fans' input when we put our thoughts on social media, customer relations. He said, these are our private social media accounts. Imagine you're an astronomer and you share you start sharing some things you've learned in the past few months since began a research project. You only have observation techniques explained to you by a layman.
Right.
I mean, I don't want to say my opinion, but that's not, you shouldn't really be saying that about your fans.
Well, I mean, I understand that they are kind of frustrated because I feel like they have a lack of privacy for just Discord in general on social media platforms. But I feel like that's the price you pay for being in certain industries.
That's the payoff for being a notable figure in any industry.
If you value your privacy, create a anonymous account under a different name.
Yeah, or make specifically a sort of locked private account, because you can do that on Twitter. But no, this is an open public account to which anyone who's not blocked can follow and reply and talk to. And
I'm sorry, but you can't tell me that you don't enjoy having the fans following you. I feel like this is going to slice one way or the other, just depending how they feel.
Yeah, I mean, for one thing as well, like, on Twitter, I know full well, if I think something that I like, I don't really want to tweet that because I might get a negative reaction, I'm not going to tweet it. But at the same time, if I tweet something, I'm not going to begrudge anyone for reacting positively or negatively to it, because, that's how it works.
Because whether you like it or not, completely separate and, regardless of whether you're a popular figure on a private or business account, you're putting your thoughts and opinion into a public forum. You should expect people to have Discord and communication with you and to also share their thoughts as well. Because if you're just making a statement, say that. This is just a statement.
Say it in like a locked forum. Like, go onto the Guild Wars forums and post this thing and then just leave it.
Exactly, but if you're just putting something out there, expect feedback.
Yeah, it doesn't matter what it is, doesn't matter where it is. If you put something out into the public, if it gets spotted by someone who has an opinion on it, they're going to give feedback.
Mm-hmm. That's how it works.
Yeah. Anyway, back to this bullshit. Okay, so someone replied to this last tweet saying, this is quite frankly embarrassing. Twitter's not a private site. Guild Wars 2 is very much a public game. If an employee is going to share an insight about a portion of the game people find lacking, passionate players are going to respond. In this instance, criticism was delivered in a constructive and inoffensive way. To take that feedback and conflate it with sexism is unprofessional and should not be the first line of defence in scenarios such as this.
Completely
to which
agree.
Peter replied, today is a national holiday. It's our day off after working hard for months on our most recent content release. If I'm being embarrassing and unprofessional, it's because I'm enjoying a beverage in the sun in my backyard, and this nonsense is being directed at someone I respect. Again, while I'm not in agreement necessarily with what he's saying, certainly not fully, I appreciate that he is trying to defend his colleague. Mm-hmm. I appreciate that specific aspect of what this is. That's cool.
I don't disagree with that. I mean, you should always defend people that you feel are in the right. I'm a little bit concerned that he feels she is in the right.
Yeah, I mean, again, people can have different opinions on this kind of thing. Mm-hmm. That's how it works. And if he happens to think that she's in the right, then sure, go for it, defend her. But anyway, so I think for the moment we're moving off Twitter then. Finished on that bit. So, as you can imagine though, this series of tweets developed a bit of a Twitter storm.
Yep, I'm following.
Yeah, and it also ended up on, I think it was the Guild Wars Reddit, and there was a lot of people who basically called for her to be fired. I should imagine there were death threats in there as well, because people are dicks.
Yeah.
A lot of people were calling for some sort of disciplinary action, calling for her to be fired, And Mike O'Brien, the CEO of Arionet, I don't actually know how that's pronounced. I think I've just heard Arionet a lot, so that's how I've been pronouncing it. Recently, 2 of our employees failed to uphold our standards of communicating with players. Their attacks on the community were unacceptable. As a result, they're no longer with the company. I want to be clear that the statements they made do not reflect the views of Arionet at all. As a company, we always strive to have a collaborative relationship with the Guild Wars community. We value your input and we make this game for you. So,
boom, there you go.
From that statement, I want you to take very special note of the fact that he didn't mention their names. Want you to take a note of that.
Okay.
Because there's more.
What a saga.
Oh,
okay.
Yeah, we're still going.
Consider their names noted, or lack of names noted.
So. After this, Jessica Price decided that she was going to respond to this whole incident.
This is after she's
been fired.
Right, okay.
So, I need to very quickly find...
Now I feel like the bombs are about to fly.
Yeah, I need to find the appropriate quotes again, because these are a little bit... Oh, she also called someone a rando asshat.
Oh.
So, quote, like the next rando asshat who attempts to explain how the concept of branching dialogue to me, as if you know, having worked in the game narrative for a fucking decade, I've never heard of it, is getting insta-blocked. I mean, it's not...
She seems to be very up herself, right?
Yeah.
I mean, just because you haven't had the same experience as her in that same field, who's to say that somebody can't come along and be naturally talented and gifted and give her pointers? Like, isn't that how you kind of learn, by taking outside experiences and input and kind of learning from that, improving? You can't just it can't all just be self-improvement. You have to take some external inputs on board to help you grow as well. But anyhow.
So, Jessica Price then reached out to, I think, a couple of news outlets to explain her side of the story around her firing. And I'm going to use... There's a particular quote here that I will also point out as quite ironic, but I'll save that. Anyway, Price told Kotaku in an email that it was very much a sort of straw that broke the camel's back moment, because by the quote, by the time the guy came along, I was so tired of having random people explain my job to me in the company where I had to just smile and nod, and I was like, no, not here, not in my space. And I'm going to consider the straw that broke the camel's back moment phrase in another context, because I suspect that this firing might have been, like, this event that led to her firing might have been the whole straw that broke the camel's back moment in that regard. Because a few hours after Total Biscuit had died, she said some not nice things about him.
Ooh.
Hours after he died.
Okay, so that would be a lot of
sort
straws
of like,
on the camel's back.
Yeah, in the sort of, like, very much the sort of, oh, I'm pleased that he's dead, I'm glad that he's gone. It was very much that sort of sentiment.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Alright, well, that's a lot of straws.
Just putting that out there. Just saying, I'm going to inject my opinion ever so slightly and say, this last exchange might have been the straw that broke the camel's back in regards to her employer firing her.
Taking note of other happenings.
Yeah. So, let's find the next.
Or, I mean, in her defense as well, perhaps he could just be saying that to avoid backlash himself for just firing her for one incident. Don't know.
I don't know.
Possible.
We'll get on to our sort of overall opinions on the whole thing a bit later anyway. Once I've finished explaining everything, because we're still going.
That's a saga.
And you could argue that, she's just like this with all of her fans and she's no nonsense. But in fact, there's, like, she's been very polite to a lot of people who weren't critical in any way. Like, they're just sort of like, I found your thread interesting. But by the seams of it, the moment someone injects any sort of contrary opinion, she seems to get
Feels
a little
attacked.
get a little bit overdone about it.
Can't handle criticism.
Yeah, so let's find the next relevant piece of information. Right. So, with her firing, let's get onto this. So, in a quote from her interview/email reply to these magazines, to Kotaku, she said, regarding Arianet, it's full of genuinely empathetic people who want to create an environment of trust and teamwork. And regarding her interview, I warned people in my interview that I was loud about issues on social media and no intention of shutting up. They reassured me that they admired my willingness to speak the truth to power. Okay. Still don't know if... I think there's still a line between, defending yourself, speaking the truth, all of that kind of thing, and just generally harassing, well, not harassing necessarily, but just abusing a fan or the fan base. There is,
I agree.
There is a line. Because I can't say negative things about where I work on Twitter or Facebook. I mean, I deliberately don't say where I work on Twitter and Facebook as well, because I don't need that pressure. But I also, you don't do that. Like, all these companies have social media policies now. So many companies have it. And there's a very good reason for it. Because you don't want your employees slagging you off or slagging customers off.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the company was playing a very dangerous game to even invite that can of worms. Because they, by the sounds of it, from how she's worded it, there didn't appear to be a clear line.
Yeah, they didn't tell her where the line might have been.
Yeah, they invited a firecracker in.
Yeah. Right. So anyway, when she was fired, the CEO actually did it in person and had a personal meeting with her. And apparently told her that she was going to look back on this and regret it because we were doing, quote, we were doing amazing things and I ruined it, end quote. And the only regrets I've ever had, however, have been in this situation where I didn't stand up for myself, not the ones which I did. I don't expect that to change anytime soon. My only real regret here is that I encouraged other women to come on board to the company and promised them it was a safe company for them.
Is it not a safe company for them? Is there any more information? Like, why is it not a safe company for women specifically?
I know.
That's what I'm interested in.
Like, why has she brought it... She keeps bringing
back
it back
to a sexist thing.
I don't think it is. Like,
yeah, it makes you wonder, though.
She's the only person who's talking about it like it's a sexist thing. Like, that's part of the issue.
Now, that's not to mean that, a lot of women who are in negative positions, they may not necessarily have the confidence to speak up like she does, which is very common.
Yeah, there's definitely, issues for women in the workplace. Not denying that at all. Really want to fix that. But in this instance, I don't think there is.
It feels like more of some kind of convoluted scapegoat for her actions to some degree.
Again, we could get pilloried for this because, we're just two cisgendered white men talking about this. So, we're speaking from the most privileged position in the world. But at what point...
I want to know more.
at what point did her gender get brought into this by anyone other than her? Because I've looked through this stuff extensively and I can't see it. No. She's the only person who brings it up, and it's really, really strange to me.
I can't see it from what you've detailed, but that's what I'm saying. It makes me wonder if there was a prerequisite that's triggered it in this post. Something has been happening behind the scenes, maybe. She's just the straw that's broken the camel's back, and she's just exploded. But, wouldn't you come clean with all the details after you've been fired, if that were the case? If you were worried about these women, wouldn't now be the time to come forward?
Yeah, go into more detail and go, this maybe isn't the best place for women. Oh, there's actually sexist things going on, but...
Yes.
Doesn't... I don't know. Maybe... I don't know.
Oh,
anyway, the interview goes on. So, she says, the message is very clear, especially to women at the company. Bring it in again. If Reddit wants you fired, we'll fire you. And I will actually... I'll give her that.
Yeah.
Because this has very much empowered Reddit. Like, the whole shit side of Reddit at the moment. Because a lot of female game devs are finding themselves now, like, having loads of arsehole Reddit people putting things up going, fire this person because of some really innocuous thing ages ago.
Yeah, that's not on.
No, that's not on. That is shit. Don't use this as an excuse for your sexist bollocks. You need to fuck off. So, anyway, that's an example of the other side of this argument being shit. So, again, this is an argument, this is the whole situation where I don't think anyone comes out of this looking good. Anyway, the quote goes on. The quality of your work doesn't matter. Your personal space, your personal social media is not yours. You are on the clock 100% of the time. We own you. You're not allowed to be yourself. You're not allowed to get frustrated. You're not allowed to have your own space to breathe. Get out there, make sure the players have a good time. Make sure you smile while they hit you. End quote. Again, you are a publicly significant person on a public forum. You can't, for instance, say to Kim Kardashian, just gonna bring this to the sort of mainstream top of the zenith. You can't say that Kim Kardashian, if she tweets something, is like she's off the clock and it doesn't matter. As a public personality, everyone who is a public personality is always on the clock when it comes to their image, their representation, and the representation of the people or companies around them. That is how it works. I know it can be frustrating and annoying, and I get that, but that is the price you pay for being in the public eye.
It is shit, and I get where she's coming from, but you're right. That's just what it is. And it makes me wonder, like, we have all these policies surrounding, by employers and corporations and businesses, studios. We have all these policies regarding what you can and can't do on social media, etc., etc. But I wonder if anybody actually goes into detail, what it's actually going to be like working for any specific company that is in the public spotlight. Do they go into detail? You're always going to be in the spotlight. Is that thoroughly detailed and made clear and transparent to them? That's what I wonder.
Yeah, I think there is that, but
I mean, that's the reality for some of them, but it makes you wonder whether they get in too deep and then they just snap and they didn't maybe realise from the get-go.
I think you should, at this point, you should know going into, when you're going into a job at a large company, especially one that's sort of as, open as game development. It's sort of open and involved with the community, because it's not like if you work for, pulling an example out of my recent experience, working for Lego, because they're hiring someone at the moment. If I became a master builder for Lego, I'm not automatically a public personality. But in industries such as the game industry or the film industry, when you work for these big companies like this, you are more likely to become a public personality. So you should probably go in with that mindset.
Yeah, I don't disagree.
Yeah. So, anyway, we're getting close to this. Anyway, we're getting towards the end now.
Jesus, the climax.
Yeah, and so we're gonna talk about very very quickly about what she said regarding this. What's his name? O'Brien, Miles O'Brien, was it? Mike O'Brien being there for firing him. Who's apparently given no opportunity to argue her case. Because he was on holiday. Because her manager was on holiday, so sort of middle management. O'Brien spent some time insisting that developers must be friends with the company's customers. It's unacceptable to say that we aren't, even when we're not on the clock. He told me I'd look back on this and regret this. We've already said that. The whole thing was highly unprofessional. There was zero reason for him to be there. He wanted to vent his anger, and he had the power to command a woman to stand there while he took his feelings out on her, so he did. And then he walked out, and the manager got her stuff from her desk, and the HR person asked for her key card. Why is she bringing her gender into this again? It's not because you're a woman. It's because you've done a bad thing. It's nothing to do with you being a woman. Please.
Yeah, I mean, unless there's something we're unaware of, I'm not saying it.
No.
Maybe she just does just feel victimized in general as a woman. I don't know. I'm not a woman. I don't know. I struggle to comment on this too thoroughly because I just don't feel like I have necessarily the entire picture. But I don't see where she's coming from with what I do have. So
yeah. I will also point out she keeps bringing her gender into this. Does she know that a man got fired as well?
Yeah, for the same thing.
Yeah. Just gonna put that out there. God.
What if it had been a female employer that fired her?
Yeah, would that have been better? I don't know. I don't
know. Would the argument change for her? Would it then become about her comments online and what she'd actually done? I just don't understand. Is she saying that she's not in the wrong at all? Or she's saying she has the right to vent whatever she wants?
She genuinely seems to think that she's in the right.
Right. Okay. Well, I mean, you've got an opinion to vent about whatever you want in whatever shape and form you want, but there will always be repercussions for your actions.
Yeah. Right. So, Mike O'Brien, AriaNet CEO. We're going to move on from Jessica Price at the moment. We're going to move back to AriaNet. And he decided, as the sort of anger and the interviews were building up, he was like, I'm gonna make a response to this. I'm going to read you an excerpt of it. We've all dedicated our careers to entertaining people, to making games for the purpose of delighting those who play them. We generally have a wonderful relationship with our community, and that's a point of pride for us. We want to hear from our players. It's not acceptable that an attempted interaction with our company, in this case a polite game suggestion, would be met with open hostility and derision from us. That sets a chilling precedent. The tweets were made on July the 4th when the studios closed for the holiday because of Independence Day in America. We were aware of them that day and decided we needed to take action in the morning. The fact that the community's anger was escalating on said morning could make it look like our actions were a response to the community's anger, but that wasn't the case. We took action as soon as we practicably could. I hate letting an employee go, and I wish the best for Jessica and Peter, as for any former employee, in whatever they choose to do next. Right. Also, he does go on to say, Jessica and Peter were also part of the team that brought you the kidnapping scene in episode 1 of Guild Wars 2, which was wonderfully well executed scene. That's how I want to remember their time at AriaNet. So even while he's complimenting them and everything, even while he's going, we had to do this, he's also saying they are still good at their jobs. They're, he's complimenting them.
He's not
while
pushing
he's doing
them
it.
under
He's
the
not just
bus.
going, oh, they're shit people. They were the worst writers. He's not being a complete douche canoe about it.
Yeah, look, I don't know on this one, right? I just don't know. chances are this could have been, they could have had a lot of internal, this is what you just don't know about these things. There could have been a lot of internal issues with them in the past, and, maybe they've been fired for a culmination of many things, but this is what they decided to pin them on officially. Or it really could have just been a reaction to the backlash that the company was receiving. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe they're trying to save face.
I'm gonna bring my opinion in. We've got one more thing to talk about after this, but I'm gonna bring my opinion into it very quickly. My personal opinion is that she shouldn't have been fired. She should have had a disciplinary meeting, and there should have been some sort of disciplinary consequence. I don't believe she should have been fired, and I believe that the reason she was fired as opposed to just a disciplinary was partly because of the reaction on Reddit, etc.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that, but who's to say she hasn't had that disciplinary reaction before in the past?
Exactly, because we have the Total Biscuit thing as an example. We have that to say.
I bet she got disciplined for that. I bet you.
I'd be very surprised if she did.
Yeah, and I mean, the whole reason for maybe why this isn't mentioned in his release and statement on the issue is perhaps he legitimately doesn't want to push her under the bus, and he does want her to find work again one day. If you're stating that, hey, we've had to discipline her multiple times, that does not work for her, and she will not work again.
It makes you look like, oh, well, she's obviously a problem employee.
She is damaged goods, yeah.
Exactly. So, right, last little thing that we're going to talk about, Jessica Price, because the story seems to have sort of come to a bit of a halt at the moment. Right. Remember back to the statement that Mike O'Brien put out when they were originally let go, and that their names weren't mentioned. Neither her nor Peter's names were mentioned.
Yes, I do remember.
Point. Right. Okay. She decided to come back on Twitter very, very quickly to basically accuse Arianet of actively soliciting harassment. Yeah. Okay. So she said she's taking a break. She's going on to, like, she's had a vacation planned anyway, so she's going to take it. And so she said she's currently not reading reactions on Twitter. What would be the point? I have a security team handling my social media since I'm under full bot assault. There's nothing worth reading from bots and strangers on Twitter. If fellow devs want to reach out to me, then they have been in droves. We have a network of mutual connections through which they can do that. And then she says, I need to find it again.
Well, very smart by her employer for not using her name, because that could definitely contribute to harassment claims.
Yeah. So, much of the narrative around this is Jessica Price speaking, much of the narrative around this has been around, one, that I was fired, and two, whether or not there was warning or discussion. That's missing a big portion of this. So let's talk about not how I was fired, but how it was announced. The announcement was an escalation. The company could have chosen to say their remarks don't represent the company. We don't agree with what they say, and they're no longer with the company. That's not what they did. They framed an interaction on my personal social media in which I told a few individuals who I thought were being assholes that I wasn't on the clock and I wasn't going to feign affection for people who were being assholes as attacks on the community. Your name wasn't mentioned. The only thing that was mentioned specifically, recently 2 of our employees failed to uphold standards of player communication. Their attacks on communicating with players, their attacks on the community was unacceptable.
Yeah, that's it. That's why they're gone.
That's, it's a slightly longer way of what she thinks they should have said. Their remarks don't represent the company. We don't agree with what they say. They're no longer with the company. It's a slightly longer version of that, but that's effectively what it is. You weren't mentioned. The specific incident, while alluded to, wasn't mentioned. Okay. So.
What a clusterfuck.
Yeah, it's not, Anyway, so apparently, this carries on. They knew, or at least had responsibility to know in 2018, what would happen to a female game dev, bringing the gender into it again, who was fired in response to an exchange about sexism. Not what it was about. It would have been bad enough if they just fired me and announced I was fired, but they escalated. They pointed to Peter and me as enemies of the community. That wasn't just firing us. Oh well, if they get harassed, that's them's the breaks. That was active solicitation of harassment, and their silence in condemning the harassment is profoundly telling.
Holy fuck.
It's a lot to unpack, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm unpacking this like for the third time, and it's no easier.
Yeah, bear with me. This is my first. This is my first unpacking.
I mean...
Yeah, I honestly don't know what to say at this point, man.
I genuinely think that she just doesn't get why she was fired. I think she doesn't understand it. And that's not because she's a stupid woman, that's because she's a stupid person. Shut up, comment section.
Either that, or she really, I think, could just feel victimized as a woman in general. Perhaps she is a little bit jaded in that sense. I don't know.
Again, that happens a lot. I get that. I'm sure she does experience, like, sexism on the internet and in the game industry constantly. I get that, and I understand that, and that's shit. But this wasn't what it was in this instance. You know?
I agree. I think I fall in alignment with you, though. If this was the first time she's been reprimanded or pulled up for something, yeah, I think she probably should have just had a slap on the wrist and a speaking to. Same with the other fella as well.
Yeah.
But, you know, I believe this is not the first time. And the public statement that went out was to save face for the business and for her so that she can find employment elsewhere.
Yeah.
That's just where I stand on it. You know, should she have been... Yeah. One
thing I will pull up on that I do actually agree with her on. Their silence in condemning the harassment is profoundly telling. I agree that they shouldn't stay silent on the harassment part, because that is, I'm sure that's actually happening at the moment. Like, they haven't actively solicited it like she claims, I don't think. But they still should condemn it.
Absolutely.
I'm going to double check their Twitter account. AriaNet.
Yeah, it's an interesting one.
And they've said anything.
It's an interesting one.
Yeah.
I would just like to know if there's any truth to her claims as to what's happening internally.
I don't know. They're not backed up with anything. She's not backed up anything.
No.
Yeah, that's fair enough. You know, sometimes people don't want to come forward about it, and that's fine. But it's a very, very bold claim to make.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like you almost have to at this point to lay a claim like that at your previous employer, and then to then think you're going to find work elsewhere without at least having something as evidence to support your claims. It doesn't look good.
Yeah. So, I think pretty much at this point... Oh, we're not done. Okay. So, I'm not sure what they can possibly do to reassure their employees, let alone every other dev in the industry whose backs they painted targets on, that they won't use the mob to punish an employee who feels has gotten too uppity. One more thing, Mike O'Brien's most recent statement reduces my contribution to Guild Wars 2 to one scene on one episode. Given how often women's work is erased or minimised, that's especially egregious. So, for the record... what's for the record? No, come back. Everything in Guild Wars 2 is made by a team. There's no content made by one person, but in terms of influence, the entire season is mine. I led the season story-breaking meetings. I led the episode outlining meetings, and every line of dialogue went through me. Everything you've seen in the story so far this season is my work, and you're going to be seeing my work in it for a long time. I don't think that was his intention with the statement. I think he was just pointing out a particularly good bit. Yeah. Again, she keeps bringing it back to gender, and it's just not that. That isn't the issue. It's an issue, but it's not this issue.
I agree.
This is where her problem is. She keeps bringing in an issue that, while it exists, is not the issue of this thing.
At hand, yeah.
I know. Oh. Okay, right. I know I sort of went off the rails in regards to bringing across an objective opinion on this stuff, but I tried, okay?
You did good. I'm proud. You did a good job.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit lost for words now. I think I've kind of tiptoed through it as we've stumbled along. It's just hard to tell, isn't it, in these situations? I think the lesson to take away from this is be careful what you say online, because it can open shitstorms up, it gets messy for each party, and then we open up this debate as to should he or she have been fired for vocalizing thoughts and opinions, whether they be negative or not. Are they always on the clock, or are they not? I believe that if you're in a position where you have a huge fan base and interactivity with your fan base, and you're in an industry such as the video gaming industry where you do interact with your fan base on a regular basis, you're always on the clock, whether you like it or not. And I would hope that employers are making that transparent and clear to the people and skills that they bring on board into their studios, because if they're not, then that's unfortunate for the people that do cross these lines. If it's not clear and transparent, even though you and I know, for us at least, that we would put 2 and 2 together. Some people aren't necessarily that switched on and cluey in that sense though. So it's just a whole series of unfortunate events that unfortunately drag sexism into it, even though I do not believe it's present, unless it is happening behind the scenes somewhere that we're unaware of. But if it is, why would you not take this opportunity now to go into details about that? You've been fired, you can handle it tastefully. I feel like you're doing yourself more harm than good than painting this big sexist stroke over it without supporting that stroke itself. That's all I'm going to say on this. I'm still wrapping my head around it. It's just a big clusterfuck.
So, I'll give my quick opinion then. Bit of a mess. She shouldn't have brought sexism into it. At the end of the day, though, she's, by all accounts, she is a good video game writer. I hope that she realizes that this situation isn't about sexism. I hope she can understand the reasons for her firing. I don't necessarily think she should have been fired if this was indeed her sort of first proper infraction. If there were any other infractions that led up to this, then fine, I understand that, but we don't know the whole situation regarding that, and she's certainly not provided us with that information. And, no companies have to provide us with that information. That's not how it works. And at the end of the day, just be pleasant to people. This is not even just a rule online, a rule in general. Just be pleasant. Just be nice. It's not that difficult. I mean, I know I'm quite a salty person. I can come across as a sort of bit confrontational sometimes, but I'm only confrontational to people who are confrontational in the first place. My default reaction to any person is to be pleasant to them, unless they give me a reason not to be, and I believe, quite honestly, that should be everyone's just reaction in general. Just be pleasant.
Just be pleasant. Be careful what you say online, because it can come back and bite you in the butt.
Exactly.
All right. Well, I think we've
talked
this has
for
turned
50,
into another epic.
I was expecting about 20 minutes, half an hour. It's turned out to be about 50 minutes.
I'm still editing the last epic, but we'll make do.
This will be less of an epic, and you don't have to cut out much necessarily. I think just you can get away with pasting most of this up.
Yes. So, all right, I agree. Let's wrap her up. Again, for the listeners, share your thoughts below. Let's keep it tasteful, though.
Yes,
let's
don't
keep it
be
respectful.
A dick. And just a qualifier, we're not sexist people. I am all for women's equality. I want women to be less oppressed. I want them to be able to get into everything they want to get. I want more women in the games industry, in any industry. I want that. So don't try and conflate anything that we're saying as being anti-women, because we are definitely not. Just gonna pop that there.
Yes, more minds are better from multiple genders than one mind from the one gender. Let's get all the minds involved, more creativity. Let's see what happens. I agree, 110%. But again, let us know what you think down below. Let's keep it tasteful. If you've enjoyed this, please check out our other content on the channel. As well, coming up after this episode of Pocket Edition, I have a special edition of Pocket Edition where Mark from the review team and I thoroughly covered all things Dragon Ball Super, and had some news and information about the new movie coming up for that franchise and series in December. So be sure to check that out in the near future. As well, if you'd like to chat with Count and I, you can also find us in our Discord community, the GameCast Discord community. You can find a link for that down below in the description box, where you'll also find links to our iTunes and SoundCloud accounts. So if you'd prefer to listen to the audio formats on the go, you can do so. But other than that, guys, we'll see you in the next episode of Pocket Edition. Have a good one.
Bye!